She looked at me like I was nothing. Like my dark skin, my simple coat, my quiet little table in the corner made me invisible. So she smiled, that tight, cruel little smile rich people give when they think no one can touch them, and she lifted her glass of red wine, and she poured it over my head in front of the entire restaurant. But she had no idea who she just humiliated. She had no idea that by the time the night was over, her whole world would be shaking, and mine would finally be seen. If you've ever been judged before anyone even knew your story, stay with me till the end because what happens next will give you chills. And if stories like this move you, hit subscribe because I have a feeling you're going to want to hear how this one ends. I want to start from the beginning because I think it matters. I think you need to understand who I was before that wine ever touched my skin, so you understand why I didn't cry, why I didn't scream, why I simply stood up and walked away like nothing had happened at all. I grew up with very little. My mother worked two jobs just to keep the lights on, and I remember nights where dinner was whatever we could stretch across four plates. I'm not telling you this for pity. I'm telling you this because it built something in me that money never could. It built patience. It built silence. It built the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout to prove it's there. I worked my way through school on scholarships and part-time jobs that left my feet aching by midnight. I studied when everyone else was sleeping. I turned every rejection into fuel instead of defeat. And slowly, quietly, without anyone clapping for me, I built a life. Not a flashy one, not one people would notice walking down the street, but a real one, a stable one I was proud of. By the time I turned 30, I had built a small but respected consulting firm, helping companies restructure and grow when they were on the edge of falling apart. I wasn't famous. I wasn't chasing attention. I liked it that way. I liked walking into a room and being underestimated, because being underestimated meant people showed me exactly who they were before they ever knew who I was. That night, the night everything changed, I had just closed one of the biggest deals of my career. It wasn't a small win. It was the kind of deal that could change the trajectory of my entire company. I had worked on it quietly for 8 months, flying under the radar, meeting with executives who barely acknowledged me until the numbers spoke for themselves. And when it finally closed that afternoon, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Pride, real, quiet pride. So I decided to treat myself. I picked a restaurant I had walked past 100 times but never dared to enter, one of those elegant, softly lit places where the tablecloths are ironed so crisp they look untouched, where the waiters speak in hushed, polished tones, where every plate looks like art before you even taste it. I wore my one good dress, the navy one I keep for moments that matter, and I asked for a small table near the window. Just me, just this moment I had earned. I remember sitting there, sipping my water slowly, watching the city lights flicker outside, feeling proud of every hard year that had led me to that seat. I had my notebook with me, the same worn leather one I carry everywhere, filled with notes from the deal, numbers, strategies, small reminders to myself of how far I had come. I ordered a modest meal, nothing extravagant because extravagance was never really the point. Being there was the point, being allowed to feel just for one evening that I had made it. And then the doors opened and the energy of the room shifted. She walked in like she owned the air itself. Tall, polished, dressed in something that probably cost more than my monthly rent, dripping in jewelry that caught every bit of light in the room. Behind her walked the man everyone in that restaurant seemed to recognize instantly, the kind of billionaire whose name gets whispered in business circles, the kind of man whose presence makes waiters trip over themselves to be perfect. She was his girlfriend, and she wore that title like a crown, like it gave her permission to treat the entire world as her staff. From the moment she sat down, I could feel her energy poison the room. She snapped at the waiter for seating them too close to the kitchen. She complained loudly about the wine selection, even though I doubt she knew the difference between one bottle and another. She made comments not whispered but loud enough to be heard about people around her, about their clothes, their manners, their presence. And every time her eyes swept the room, they eventually landed on me. I didn't react. I kept my eyes on my plate, my notebook resting quietly beside it. I had learned a long time ago that people like her feed off reaction, and I refused to be her meal that night. But refusing to react only seemed to provoke her more. At some point, I got up to speak briefly with the restaurant manager, just a small, polite exchange thanking him for the evening. As I turned to walk back to my table, my shoulder brushed lightly against the back of her chair, an accident, nothing more than the natural movement of a crowded room. But she turned around like I had committed some unforgivable crime. "Watch where you're going," she snapped loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. I apologized calmly, the way you do when you know an apology isn't really necessary but you're choosing peace over conflict. I began to walk away. And that's when she stood up, wine glass in hand, and said the words I will never forget. "People like you should know your place." The restaurant went silent. And before I could even process what she meant by those words, she tipped her glass forward and poured the deep red wine directly over my head. I felt it before I understood it. The cold liquid soaking through my hair, running down my face, staining the navy dress I had worn so proudly that night. I heard gasps around the room. I heard someone's fork clatter against a plate. I heard her laugh, a sharp, ugly little laugh like she had just won something. For a moment, I didn't move. The room was spinning slightly, not from dizziness but from disbelief, from the sheer weight of humiliation pressing down on my shoulders. I could feel every eye in that restaurant on me. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck into my cheeks. I could feel my hands trembling, not from fear but from a mixture of anger and shock so deep it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. But something in me refused to break. I slowly reached for the napkin on my table. I wiped my face calmly, deliberately, as if I had all the time in the world. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not give her the reaction she was desperately hoping for. I simply looked at her, straight in the eyes, and let the silence stretch long enough that it became uncomfortable for everyone but me. Then I picked up my notebook, tucked it under my arm, and walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, wine still dripping from the ends of my hair, my dignity fully intact despite the stares following me to the door. I want you to understand something. In that moment walking out, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking about consequences. I was thinking about my mother, about the nights she came home exhausted but never let bitterness touch her voice. I was thinking about every person who ever doubted me, and how none of them ever managed to break the calm I had built inside myself. What I didn't know yet, standing outside that restaurant in the cool night air, wine soaking through my coat, was that the woman who had just humiliated me was about to learn exactly who she had chosen to embarrass. The next morning, I went into the office as usual. My assistant greeted me with her usual warmth, but I could see something in her eyes, a kind of hesitation like she was holding back words. She finally told me that a video had surfaced online overnight. Someone in the restaurant had filmed part of what happened, not the full incident, but enough. Enough to show the wine, the laughter, the humiliation, and it was spreading. I felt my stomach tighten. I am a private person by nature. I don't seek attention, and the idea of strangers watching my most vulnerable moment online made something in me recoil. But as the day went on, something unexpected began to happen. People started recognizing me, not from the video itself, but from the details surrounding it. Someone had mentioned the deal I closed the day before. Someone connected the dots that the woman in the video, soaked in wine, composed and calm, was the same consultant behind one of the most talked about business restructurings of the year. And slowly the story began to shift. It wasn't about a woman being humiliated anymore. It was about who she really was. Meanwhile, across town, the woman who had poured that wine over my head was busy building her own narrative. She posted about the incident on her social media, painting herself as the victim of some rude, clumsy stranger who had bumped into her and deserved what she got. Her followers, dazzled by her wealth and her billionaire boyfriend, cheered her on in the comments, calling her classy, calling her justified. But the internet has a strange way of revealing truth, even when people try their hardest to hide it. Someone found the full footage. Not the edited clip she had shared, but the raw, unfiltered version showing the entire exchange, my calm apology, her venomous words, the deliberate way she tipped that glass. And once that footage surfaced, the narrative flipped entirely. Comments poured in condemning her behavior. People called out the cruelty in her voice, the arrogance in her posture, the ugliness behind her polished exterior. Her billionaire boyfriend's name began appearing alongside hers in the headlines, no longer just as her partner, but as someone now facing public scrutiny for staying silent while she humiliated a stranger over something as small as a brushed shoulder. I found out later that he had been in the middle of finalizing a major business partnership, one that required trust, reputation, and careful public image. And in a twist neither of us could have predicted, the very company he needed to close that deal with was connected to my own firm. My restructuring work, the deal I had celebrated the night before, was tied directly to his business interests. When his team realized that the woman his girlfriend had humiliated in that video was the same consultant central to securing his upcoming deal, the panic that followed was immediate and undeniable. I received a call 2 days later, a formal, almost desperate call from his office requesting a private meeting. I agreed, not out of a desire for confrontation, but because I believed in facing things directly, calmly, without unnecessary drama. When I walked into that meeting room, I could see it in his eyes immediately. The realization, the regret, the quiet fear of a man who understood he was standing at the edge of losing something valuable because of someone else's cruelty. He apologized. He seemed sincere in his own way, though I understood clearly that his concern was tangled up with the business risk hanging over his head. His girlfriend was not in that meeting. I learned later that their relationship had become strained in the days following the incident, the pressure of public backlash, the business fallout, the embarrassment of being associated with cruelty that the entire internet had witnessed in vivid detail. Reports began circulating that he had distanced himself from her, unwilling to let her actions cost him a deal he had worked years to secure. I didn't ask for her downfall. I want to be clear about that. I never once demanded she be punished, never once used my position to push for her public shaming. I simply continued moving forward with quiet integrity, the same way I always had, closing the deal, growing my company, letting the truth speak for itself in its own time. But the truth has a way of settling accounts, even when you don't ask it to. Weeks later, I heard she had lost more than just her public image. She lost access to circles she had spent years clawing her way into. She lost the comfort of being untouchable, the illusion that money could shield her from consequence. And most significantly, she lost the relationship that had given her that false sense of power in the first place. I didn't feel triumphant when I heard the news. I felt something quieter, something more grounded. A reminder that dignity, real dignity, doesn't need revenge to prove itself. It simply needs patience. Looking back now, I understand that wine didn't stain me the way she intended. It didn't diminish who I was. If anything, it revealed exactly who she was. Someone who mistook cruelty for power, someone who believed status could excuse the way you treat another human being. I think about that night often, not with bitterness, but with a strange kind of gratitude. It taught me something I already knew deep down, but needed to see so clearly. You never truly know who is sitting quietly in the corner of the room. You never know the strength someone carries beneath their calm exterior. And you should never, under any circumstances, believe that your money or your status gives you the right to belittle another person's worth. My mother used to tell me that character shows up loudest in the moments people think no one is watching. That night in front of an entire restaurant, my character was tested in front of everyone, and I walked away with my dignity intact, even soaked in wine, even humiliated, even shaking with quiet anger beneath my calm surface. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. Never let anyone's cruelty define your worth. Never let a single humiliating moment convince you that you are less than you are. The way you carry yourself when the world is watching, especially in your lowest, most embarrassing moments, says more about your character than any wealth or title ever could. I still walk into rooms quietly. I still let people underestimate me. And I still believe, now more than ever, that the calm you carry within yourself is a kind of power no one can take from you, no matter how many glasses of wine they pour over your head. Never let anyone's opinion of you become your reality. Your calm is your power, your dignity is your crown. If this story touched you in any way, take a moment to like this video, subscribe for more stories like this one, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. Because somewhere out there, someone else is sitting quietly in the corner of a room, being underestimated, and they need to hear that their time is coming too.